heart of Texas, LifeTalk. Here's your host, Mark Crutcher.
Hello and welcome to LifeTalk for September 2011. I'm Mark Crutcher, and lurking in the shadows are Cherie Johnson and Johnny Hunter. Troy Newman is out this month, and our good friend Pastor Stephen Broden is filling in for him. Of course, Father Frank and Janet Moreno will be joining us later, but right now it's time for Alan Ackles and this month's LifeTalk News. Alan?
All right, thank you, Mark. The Obama administration has issued new guidelines that will force all insurance companies to offer birth control and abortion-causing pills at no cost and with no payment. Under the direction of Health and Human Services Director Kathleen Sebelius, the new guidelines were developed by the pro-abortion organization Institute of Medicine. Under Obamacare, insurers must now cover all FDA-approved emergency contraception, including Plan B, the so-called morning after pill. In Ohio, the state's Catholic bishops are steering local parishes and schools away from the Susan G. Komen Foundation, warning members that fundraising for the organization could indirectly support abortion. In a public statement, the Catholic Conference of Ohio outlined its concerns and specifically addressed Komen's donations to Planned Parenthood. The conference also cited a concern that while Komen says it does not fund embryonic stem cell research, the organization has not ruled out supporting it in the future. While the conference conceded that individual Catholics might continue to contribute to Komen affiliates, it said Catholic institutions should steer clear. Well, in the continuing tragedy of pro-choice violence, a West Virginia man has been arrested after he sexually assaulted his ex-girlfriend when she refused his demand to submit to an abortion. According to a complaint filed in Kanawha Magistrate Court, the victim, who was 3 months pregnant, told officers that 48-year-old Bruce Cook ordered her to have an abortion. When she refused, he held a knife to her stomach and told her he would abort the baby. Authorities say he then sexually assaulted her. Meanwhile, a Pennsylvania man who also demanded that his girlfriend get an abortion has been arrested in her death. According to the police report obtained by LifeTalk News, 22-year-old Matthew Scott Becker claimed he was cleaning his gun when it accidentally went off, killing his girlfriend, 21-year-old Allison Walsh, who was 7 months pregnant at the time. During the investigation, however, police became suspicious of the shooting after speaking with friends and family of the victim. According to the report, witnesses told police that Becker had insisted that Walsh have an abortion. Also in Pennsylvania, the mayor of Pittsburgh has dropped an ordinance that was intended to restrict leafleting by pro-lifers. The decision came after the city lost a federal lawsuit filed by the American Center for Law and Justice. The lawsuit was filed last year on behalf of pro-life advocates Kathleen Ramsey and Albert Brune, who wanted to pass out pro-life voter guides in public. As a result of the lawsuit, the city agreed to pay $35,000 in attorney's fees and do away with the unconstitutional ordinance. Officials in San Francisco are launching a new campaign to target pro-life pregnancy centers similar to efforts in Baltimore and New York. If passed, the new ordinance would require the centers to disclose that they are abortion alternative agencies and don't provide comprehensive health care. City Attorney Dennis Herrera, who co-sponsored the legislation, has claimed that CPCs are right-wing, politically motivated centers. And City Supervisor Malia Cohen, the bill's second sponsor, admitted she worked with the National Abortion Right Action League to develop the legislation. Well, in Kentucky, Governor Steve Beshear and Catholic leaders are facing off over a proposed merger of a local Catholic health system with a public hospital. Beshear says the new entity must have a public mission and offer sterilization and abortion. Archbishop Kurtz stated that if Catholic Health Initiatives, which would own 70% of the new company, merges with the University of Louisville Hospital, as well as two other hospitals, the Church's teaching on medical care must be given precedence. Bill Donahue, president of the Catholic League for Religious and Civil Rights, believes Beshear will find a way to bring the merger to completion without asking the Catholic organizations to compromise the Church's teaching on abortion and other life issues. And finally, the results of several new surveys again confirm that the younger generation is ready to end abortion, not only in the United States, but abroad. The most recent survey commissioned in England found that pro-life issues were of greater concern to young people than their older counterparts. The data shows that 69% of the youth think abortion is a great concern, compared to only 31% of those over 65. The British survey mirrors American polls such as those by the Public Religion Research Institute, Gallup, and Reuters that consistently find young Americans say abortion is morally wrong and want all or most of them made illegal. Alan Ackles here for LifeTalk News. You can get daily news updates by logging on to ProLifeAmerica.com. Mark, back to you.
Thanks, Alan. All right, we're going to rocking and rolling here.
Do we have any news?
We have plenty of news. But first news is that Troy's not with us, as I mentioned earlier, this month.
What's he up to?
I don't know what he's doing. But he'll be back next month. But in the meantime, our good friend, Pastor Stephen Broden from Fair Park Bible Church in Dallas is joining us.
All right, good to be with you.
Good to have you back. You filled in for Johnny one time, and
I did.
We seriously thought about not bringing Johnny back.
I seriously thought about replacing him.
Yeah.
And that would have been a good replacement, too, brother.
Well, then let's just make it a deal. What do you think?
It's on.
Anyway, thanks for joining us, Stephen. We got a lot of stuff to cover. I got a deal here. President signs the very first pro-life bill.
Which president?
Well, wait a minute. You're jumping the gun here. A new bill says that abortion clinics must not advertise abortion as safe. They must say that it has dangers, that it's not necessarily a good thing. The abortion clinics must be telling this information. The problem is, and they can't devote anything more than 10% of their advertising to abortion, and all the stuff that they give out must, like I said, talk about the dangers of abortion, and they cannot refer to abortion as a safe medical procedure. The only problem with this is the president signed this bill, but it was the Russian president. The president of Russia signed this bill.
Wow.
You know, somebody tried to send me an email saying, oh, guess what, the president signed. I'm going, where?
Right.
What country?
Where? I was busy, couldn't. Thank you, Mark. Oh, my goodness.
Some of those regulations that are on those abortion clinics in Russia are on the crisis pregnancy centers here in America.
Yep.
They are considered dangerous.
Right.
And a lot of regulations are placed upon them, but not on the abortion clinics. Isn't that
Not
interesting?
here. We just give them free reign.
Does
And by the way, in Russia, abortion's only legal through the first 12 weeks. It's not like here where it's legal right up to the moment of birth.
Does that mean that the Russians care more about Russian women and children than we do?
Well, first off, during the Soviet, we've talked about it here before, during the Soviet regime, the average Russian woman had 9 abortions. And now they are suffering incredible health problems in women in Russia. And they've tied it all back to this astronomical abortion rate. So they're starting to tell women, look, you want to do this, that's fine, but it's dangerous. And the abortion clinics cannot advertise that it's a safe medical procedure. They're prohibited by law from doing that. Hungary has now passed a new constitution which defines marriage as between one woman and one man, and also guarantees the right to life from conception for the unborn child in Hungary. Wow. You remember we had Dr. Wilkie on that was one of the past presidents of National Right to Life and now runs Life Issues Institute. We had him on one day talking about what happened in Poland. Right after the Soviet breakup, Poland outlawed abortion. Mm-hmm. And the interesting thing was that a year after they outlawed abortion, all of the health indicators for women had gotten better, every single one of them. Despite what the American abortion lobby claims, that if you outlaw abortion, it's going to destroy women's health and women are going to be impacted negatively by it. The scary thing to me here is all these former Soviet bloc countries are taking these positions, and meanwhile,
we're killing them left and right.
We're giving the nation's #1 abortion provider, profiteer, Planned Parenthood, $1 million a day in tax money. How do you reconcile all this?
So our government is busy funding these abortion places. And here we have communist countries that are saying, we're not even about to do, I mean, oh my, things are getting too turned around.
Got a thing here in a minute I want to talk about. I want to get to a couple of little things here.
And the reason why is because they have made the connection between the health of the woman and abortion.
Right.
And it's has had an incredible impact on the health of women in those nations, and they've said no more.
Yep, that's right. Mm-hmm. Well, again, we talked about, I think 2 shows ago, the president of Angola, I think, is railing against the American attempt to bring abortion into his country. Mm-hmm. And he says since they brought it there, all of a sudden now, and no, it's the health minister, the minister of health, the doctor there's the health minister in Angola saying, all of a sudden now we're having all these problems with women that we never had before. All these issues are cropping up now because the United States has come in there and pushed abortion on our country, which we didn't want. And
it's none of our business.
It's none of our business what they do.
United States and the United Nations.
United Nations, right. Mm-hmm. We talked here some time ago about this Sister Carol Ken, which is a liberal Catholic. I would argue, even though I'm not Catholic, I would argue she's not a Catholic, but that's not my decision to make, I guess. But she's president of a 600-member umbrella group for Catholic hospitals, and she supported Obamacare. And we were saying, that this is outrageous that these Catholic organizations would support Obamacare when they know good and well it's going to pay for abortion. Well, now she's all upset because of all these mergers that are going on with Catholic hospitals, and the Obama administration is going to force them to be involved with birth control and abortion, and this woman's all upset about it. And I'm thinking, where's her right to be upset?
Is she trying to say she didn't see this coming? She
saw it coming. But you know what? It's a classic example of that old statement. When you lay down with dogs, you get up with fleas. And when she laid down with dogs, she laid down with the dogs in the Obama administration. Now she's got the fleas. I don't want to hear her whining about it. Meanwhile, we talked again a couple of months ago about this guy, Richard Grossman, an abortionist in Colorado. And y'all may remember him. We had him on here quoted as saying that, and he's said it again since then, that he does abortions because he's a Christian and he feels like an obligation to help these women. Now, the Catholic hospital in Colorado has refused to remove him from their OBGYN staff, and it's caused a big ruckus. But some of the Catholics there in the local diocese are saying, and here's a quote from one of them saying, in the end, church leadership has a decision to make. What is more damaging, getting sued or continuing to militarily cooperate with a proud Planned Parenthood abortionist? And you know what? That's the bottom line right there. Mm-hmm. Because they're all afraid we're going to get sued if we don't let these abortionists on staff. Well, then get sued. Mm-hmm. Or else keep your Catholic affiliation separate from these secular hospitals so you don't have to make these decisions.
But aren't there pieces of legislation that would protect those hospitals from that kind of lawsuit?
Yeah, but Obama administration's fighting them. Right. This conscience clause, they're fighting it tooth and nail. They want to, we've talked about it here before. What happened to the concept of choice? Mm-hmm. They say women ought to have the right to choose whether to do abortions or not. I mean, to have abortion. But they don't want doctors or hospitals to choose whether they're going to participate or not. Then it becomes government force. Mm-hmm.
Or pharmacists.
Or pharmacists,
giving
right.
Out, yeah.
Right.
RU-486 and all that junk.
And forcing these Catholic pharmacists, we've had them here on the show, to require them by state law and put them in jail if they don't prescribe birth control and abortion.
The only way we can test those is that some hospital has to take the stand and take it to court.
Yeah, that's right.
But I think that's where we are. We need to be bold enough to take these things to the court and fight it out in the court system.
It's really amazing. There's a bill in Colorado that they're looking at right now that would require, and this is kind of flying under the radar screen. Not many people are paying too much attention to it, but it's very important. That would require, when a woman dies, for the birth certificate to acknowledge whether she's pregnant or not. And the reason this is so important is because you remember when I wrote Line 5 and I talked about in there how they cover up the number of women who are killed by abortion. Mm-hmm. And the way they do that depends on which state it is, but they'll have reasons on the death certificate for her death. And it'll say she died from blood loss mm-hmm. as a result of injury to uterine, as a result of so-and-so. Mm-hmm. Well, most the death certificates only put 3 causes on there. Well, the abortion industry is very good about making sure that abortion falls 4 or further down. Because eventually it'll have to say as a result of induced abortion. But if it's past 3, it won't show up on the death certificate and won't get counted as a death due to abortion. And if you don't know that the woman is pregnant and you're doing this research, you have no way of knowing if it was really an abortion she died from. Mm-hmm. And one of the things that they cite as a reason to do this, it says, for example, a woman in New York recently died from an abortion. The actual cause of death was cardiac arrest due to massive bleeding, which could mean she died from a number of causes. And they were using this as an example of how the death certificates aren't reflecting reality. And
who wants that on the death certificate?
There's a state representative that's proposing this in Colorado to say that you must put on the death certificate if the woman's pregnant or not. And, of course, you can bet that whether they do it in public or behind the scenes, the abortion lobby is fighting this tooth and nail.
Tooth and nail. But these are the kind of representatives that need to be elected.
Yes.
Right.
These are the kind of people that need to be in our government in the first place, because here is somebody trying to look out for the welfare of the people for real.
Right.
Man, oh man.
Donnie, I can't tell you the number of I'll just give everybody a real-world example of how this abortion lobby tries to cover up these abortions. When we were doing the research for Line 5, and understand we're just a tiny little organization, tiny budget, contrast that to the Centers for Disease Control, which is a government agency. At the time when I wrote Line 5 in 96, their budget was $250,000 an hour, 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, 6,000 employees. We have almost no employees and almost no budget, right? Well, for one specific group of time, it was a 1 year period of time, we were able, with our meager resources, to document 16 women having died from botched abortions. That's just what we could find. Mm-hmm. For that same period of time, the CDC listed one. And we were trying to figure out, well, how are they not finding these? Because some of them did actually list abortion on the death certificate. How was the CDC not finding them? And we're finding them 16-to-1 ratio.
Either they're not looking
we picked out one of them. It was a case in Florida, and it was a woman had died from an abortion, and we were saying, how could they miss this one? Because this is not one they had. They didn't have it listed as having come from Florida, and this one was obvious because the death certificate says she died from complications of a botched abortion. The emergency run sheet showed that she was picked up dead at an abortion clinic. How could they miss this one? That was the question. All right. So we started tracking that one and trying to figure out, okay, how'd this one fall through the cracks? Well, actually, the CDC did have it. They just didn't have it listed under abortion. They had it listed under complications due to maternity. Oh, my. And so we said, okay, now wait a minute. Wait a minute, Johnny, wait a minute. Let me tell you how they did this. It was crystal clear, obviously, that it was cause of an abortion. However, the CDC looked at this, and understand that at the time this happened, David Grimes was the head of the abortion surveillance branch at the CDC. He's a practicing abortionist. At the time he was running that abortion surveillance branch, he was working at an Atlanta, Georgia abortion clinic during that time. All right. They were looking for excuses not to count these women. In this particular case, what they'd found out was that the abortionist in this thing had allowed his medical license to lapse. And it's kind of like you might let your driver's license go. And then you go down a few weeks later, you find, oh, my driver's license expired. I'll go down and get it taken care of, right? It's no big deal. Well, this happens with doctors all the time. But what the CDC said is that since that abortion was done by him while his license was lapsed, it was not a legal abortion. It was an illegal abortion. And they did not have to count it as a death due to legal abortion. Whoa. Because it was technically an illegal abortion, so they didn't count it. And we found incident after incident after incident of how they use manipulation to keep from counting these women.
You call it cooking the books.
Cooking the books, exactly. We're going to talk about that later. We've caught them doing it again. Now, I want to get into some stuff here with the media here for a minute, one of our favorite subjects. But there's something happening that we need to keep an eye on. Planned Parenthood workers now around the country, and especially in Oregon, as the first country, but this is happening in other places. Planned Parenthood workers are now voting to join the SEIU union, Service Employees International Union, and become union members as Planned Parenthood workers. As you can imagine, Planned Parenthood is going to go berserk over this. I might have talked to you about this one time, Johnny. I don't know if I ever mentioned it to either one of y'all. I had this idea many, many years ago that we ought to create an abortion clinic workers union because it would destroy the abortion industry. And the reason is very simple. They grossly underpay their people. Almost none of them have any kind of benefits, health care, retirement, anything. I mean, you have more benefits if you go to work at an independently owned convenience store. You get a higher paid salary and more benefits than these people that work in these abortion clinics. And the turnover rate, of course, as we all know, is astronomical. If you're a second-tier employee in an abortion clinic and you're there 90 days, you're the senior employee. There's no doubt about that. And I always said what we ought to do is, beneath the radar screen, is to create an American, I even drew up a logo for it. We seriously considered doing this. American Independent Abortion Clinic Workers Union or something like that. We came up with a name for it. And start getting somebody to organize them, put them in these unions, because these abortion clinics could not survive if all their members were unionized. We never did it because we never thought we weren't going to get pro-life people to help doing it. And you're now going to get pro-abortion people to do it, so it kind of died on the vine. But now, these Planned Parenthood workers up in Oregon, and it's catching on in some other places, are saying, we're going to join this union. We need to follow this because this could really be good. This could really be good. And it will cause a rift between two people on what I call the godless left, the hardcore labor organizers and the abortion lobby. It could cause a real rift among them. Now, one of our favorite subjects here that we always talk about is the hardcore leftist media, even in conservative areas like North Texas. The Dallas Morning News is a toilet of liberalism. And, you know, I've done things with the media before a lot of times. Now, pretty much I blow them off when they call, but in the past I have dealt with them. I mean, that's the reason I blow them off now. But they're always saying, oh, we don't take ads. You know, they've refused a lot of pro-life ads. Pro-lifers will come out here and say, so-and-so, abortion is dangerous for this reason, and they won't take the ad. They say, because you can't prove that. We don't take ads that we can't prove. And I saw this ad has nothing to do with abortion. Here's a full-page ad in the Dallas Morning News. And they're selling some sort of cheap safe, okay, for your home. Mm-hmm. And the good news here is this safe comes stuffed with money already. You get money already in the safe.
How much money?
It doesn't say. You just get this safe with all this money in it. And it's talking about how, well, first off, you have to live within 50 miles radius of Dallas. And, of course, you know they got this ad all over the country. You have to live 50 miles of radius of whatever city it is. You have to be born on or before 1959, okay? And I'll bet you if you call and say, I just barely made it. I was born in 1958. Well, don't tell anybody, we'll let you. Go ahead. Send us this $800 for this safe, and it'll come chock full of money. So you're actually going to pay $800 for this safe, and the theory is the safe has more money. Now, the Dallas Morning News is running this ad. Not only that, but right above it, it's all one ad, but this makes it look like a news story where this poor old lady here opened the safe and found this jackpot full of money. That's what they call it, a jackpot full of money in this safe. And then you have this picture here of, this is talking about how somebody died and had bought one of these safes, and they open it up, and here it is stuffed with money, and here's the priest. They got a Catholic priest standing here blessing this deal. And yet, every time the pro-life movement wants to run an ad, you have to prove everything that you say in there is absolutely true. They won't even consider taking it if you don't.
Oh, my goodness.
It's unbelievable.
Well, it has to do with money. So
Then in the Dallas Morning, you know how the newspapers will lump stories together if they're of a similar subject? Here's a deal about Robert Jeffries, who's a Baptist preacher in Dallas, First Baptist Church. And they talk about how he is this ultra-conservative, kind of hardcore, rock-ribbed kind of guy, which I really doubt, but let's just say for a moment that he is. And they put it right beside the story about this guy in Sweden or wherever it was that went out, Norway, that went out and shot all these people and claimed to be a hardcore Christian. They put the stories right next to each other to show that these are the same kind of people, right? We've got these religious nuts
So you got the conservative crusader.
Right. And the guy right next to him on the front page of the Dallas Morning News.
Isn't that nice?
It is unbelievable. Yeah. Meanwhile, in St. Louis, at the St. Louis Beacon, they're doing a story basically about the Obama administration's deal about giving out free birth control and free contraception, requiring it under Obamacare and all that. And they talking about how great it would be if it was free and free of charge and had universal access regardless of the woman's means to pay, written by this guy, Robert Joyner, on the St. Louis Beacon staff. And they interviewed somebody for this story, Dr. Jeff P-E-I-P-E-R-T, I guess that's Peepert. And he's the principal investigator and a professor of obstetrics and gynecology at Washington University. That's how they identify him. And then he goes on to talk about what a wonderful thing it would be and that women's health care would be all taken care of and that abortion rates would go down and all these wonderful things would happen if we could do this. And they mentioned that he was funded by an organization that, quote, wants to remain anonymous, according to this Dr. Jeff Pieper. That's where they let it drop. They didn't go any further. Very quick Google search on this guy, and you find out that he's the medical director of Planned Parenthood St. Louis region. And has a long history here of being involved with Planned Parenthood and all these pill pushers and stuff. The newspaper never happened to mention that. Isn't that odd how they would skip that little?
But also, that's poor journalism.
There is no journalism, Johnny. It's dead. We've talked about this before.
Bias.
Yeah. And then there's several stories out that we talked about this last month. Several stories out here this month talking about all these hard cases for abortion. And some of them aren't hard cases. This woman here had a child. She called her angel baby. And the child had some problems. So at 29 weeks, she chose to have an abortion. And she's talking about what a gut-wrenching experience this was for her. But she claimed that she did it to keep her child from living in pain. She said, my unborn child was in pain because it had this health problem that the doctors identified, so I killed this child. And she's all happy about this. She's
Based
perfect.
on the recommendation of the doctor,
Right.
obviously.
Because the child's in pain. Right. Well, why is it that every time, and they just left it right there. She said she was in pain. I couldn't sit back and watch, this happen.
But an abortion, the baby does not feel pain.
And that's what I was going to say. Every time we bring up the issue of fetal pain, they will stick a thing in there in the news saying there is no evidence that the unborn child feels pain. There's no medical evidence to suggest that. They didn't put it right here.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. So
They didn't put it on this story.
Feels pain. Oh.
Goes on and on.
That's not a skewed report, is it?
Oh, no. Well, you experienced that when you were running against Eddie Bernice Johnson in Dallas for Congress. Eddie Bernice Johnson, yeah.
She's like an Ernie, though.
Yeah, Ernie. Eddie, well, whatever. The story, they just go on. New York Times did this story about a woman who was trying to get pregnant. She was taking fertility treatments. She got pregnant with twins. But then as a good mom decided she could only be a mom to one, so killed the other one. Oh. And they do this in the New York Times Magazine. This is about a 12-page thing about what a good parent this woman is and what a courageous decision this was for her to make to kill one of her babies and allow the other one to live.
That was just outright wicked of her.
These people are just liars.
In fact,
More than anything, what we see is a shaping of our consciousness. It's dumbing us down. It's recasting our values inside a value system that is the antithesis of everything we know to be true in the Judeo-Christian frame.
And makes all of that look good and heroic.
The doctor refused to, he calls it a reduction. And she says that she did not have an abortion. She said, I could never have an abortion, but I could have one of these reductions. This reduction. They reduced your baby from a living baby to a corpse. If you want to call that a reduction, so be it.
I'd like to know when the child that made it grows up and realizes or hears or knows or learns he had a twin, he or she had a twin, how's that going to affect him or her?
Well, it's weird you should mention that. And I know you're a big Elvis Presley fan. Throughout his entire life, he was a twin, and his twin died. And he talked constantly about how he was affected by the fact that he was a twin and his twin died and he lived. Mm-hmm. And he had problems as a result of that for his entire life.
That's right. And it was not by force that Jesse died either.
Real quickly, we're way over on time on this segment. Down in Florida, we've talked many times here about Pendergraft, the abortionist down there. Well, he's been given a $36 million judgment against him. Whether it'll stand up or not, we don't know. And whether he has all his assets hidden, which most of these abortionists do. So the people who got the judgment against him for all his hijinks down there may never collect a nickel. But one of the things that's interesting and why the media didn't cover this, the national media didn't cover it, it's really interesting. One of his associates, Randall Whitney, another abortionist that works for Pendergraft, during the courtroom testimony testified that they commonly delivered children alive and left them, quote, wiggling around in the toilet until they die. He stated that in the trial. Where's the national media on this?
It's incredible. At the beginning of this year, 2011, there were 5 black abortionists that were sort of highlighted in the media, and he was one of them.
Right.
And I believe that was not by accident, that was by design. God exposed that the heinous practice of abortion in our community by 5 abortionists that were all black on the public scene. I think that's interesting.
Well, Gosnell.
And
this guy, and then Booker in Mississippi.
And then Bertha, what's her name, in California. And then the gal in Maryland.
And one of them's in prison for killing his wife, and he's trying to get out now.
Sure.
Why is this? Was the judgment brought? What
Well,
was it?
there's a baby born alive, and the woman is suing because she said my baby was alive, and they didn't, and there was a lot of other things. And the state went in there and found out the place was just an absolute toilet, which we've been telling them for years.
He moved out of Florida up to Washington, D.C. and opened up a shop there, doing late-term abortions in Washington, D.C. Yeah, another shop of horrors.
But anyway, I suspect that the people who got this judgment against him will never see a nickel. That's my prediction.
I hope that's not the case.
I hope so, too. But anyway, again, this guy says we routinely delivered babies alive and threw them in the toilet and let them wiggle around till they die.
Common knowledge now among these black abortionists, they are more evil in their practice than most that are doing it across this country.
I don't know about that, but they're all evil. They're thoroughly
They
evil.
seem to be
But the question
absolutely
is that
evil personified.
My argument is that the media that will not cover this is every bit as evil as they are.
You bet.
Every bit as evil as they are. Thanks. We'll be right back. Harry Blackman once stated that the death penalty cheapens the country's respect for human life. You may remember him as the Supreme Court Justice who wrote Roe v. Wade and launched the American Holocaust. In a pathetic attempt to rationalize this decision, Blackman contended that while the unborn may indeed be human, they are not persons and are therefore not entitled to have their lives protected. He did this despite the fact that there is not one word in the English language for a human being who is not a person. In any event, Blackman's personal crime against humanity has so far snuffed out the lives of more than 50 million innocent children, and 3,500 new corpses will be added to the pile today. Now, I want you to ignore Blackman's breathtaking hypocrisy and think about a specific comparison between abortion and capital punishment. In a death penalty case, the legal standard is that a state cannot execute someone if a jury determines that there is any reasonable doubt of their guilt. In addition to that, the defendant is assumed innocent and doesn't have to create this reasonable doubt. The burden of proof lies solely with the state, and that's the way it should be. But Blackman's argument was that we should take the opposite approach when it comes to executing the unborn. And ever since he wrote Roe v. Wade, the pro-choice lobby has told the lie that no one knows when life begins and then used that lie to justify abortion. The point is, if we were to apply the same logic to capital punishment that America's death merchants apply to abortion, our position would be that when a man is charged with a crime, the state does not have to prove that he's guilty. It is his responsibility to prove that he is innocent. So at the end of a trial, a judge could say to the defendant, the court has determined that we don't know whether you're guilty or not. We don't know if you committed a crime, so we're just going to go ahead and execute you anyway. As outrageous as that sounds, it is exactly what the pro-choice lobby is arguing when it defends abortion on the basis that no one knows when life begins. They are saying that since there is some question about whether the unborn is or is not a living human being, it is acceptable to execute them by the millions. And that's exactly what we've done. Of course, the reality is that there is no question about whether the unborn are living human beings or not. They are. Modern technology has proven it, and our enemies know it. They just don't care.
For almost 40 years, you've been told that the abortion issue is about choice and women's rights, reproductive freedom. But that's just marketing hype. And this explosive feature-length documentary proves it. It's called Maafa 21, and it's a gritty behind-the-scenes look at America's family planning establishment. Now, when you see their dirty little secrets and hidden motives dragged into the light, you'll finally know the real reason why abortion was legalized. But don't think this is about history. It's not. What you're going to see in this film is happening right here, and it's happening right now. With information that will absolutely take your breath away. Maafa 21 is going to challenge you, it's going to shock you, and it's going to make you angry. But when it's over, you will know things that America's politicians and power brokers never intended for you to know. And you will have seen things that the media is never going to show you. The fact is, this DVD is about to change the way you look at the battle over abortion. The cost is only $20, and you can order it on this website or by calling toll-free 1-800-800-LIFE. We'll pay for the shipping. So, place your order right now. It's time for you to know the truth about these people.
Welcome back. We have a lot of things going on with MAFA 21. That project just continues to grow, and I think it's fixing to explode again. I think this deal we're about to talk about is going to really make it explode. But I just want to bring people up to date on one thing that just happened. Johnny's organization Learn, their Northeast director, Clenard Childress, who's also in MAFA 21, along with both of y'all.
And you.
And me. Well, that's the main deal. I mean, what would it be without that, right?
Oh, I thought the main deal was the information, but that's okay.
No, okay. But anyway, you guys were able to put, do you know how many people, I think he had 10 or 12 that he took to the NAACP convention in Los Angeles.
And worked with Walter Hoy was working with
Walter Hoy was out there. They put 10 or 12 African Americans on the sidewalk in front of the NAACP convention and handed out 3,000 MAFA 21s. 3,000.
I thought it was 1,000. So
3,000.
2,000 more than I thought.
Yeah, 3,000 MAFA 21s.
And I understand that the NAACP was busy trying to stop them from handing them out, sent their little security people out.
Right. He said it got a little tense there for a while, and Clenard called me from out there, and he said, you know, it's really interesting. The NAACP is trying to use tactics against us that were used against Martin Luther King when he was going into the streets onto public sidewalks that he helped pay for to deliver his civil rights message. He said now the NAACP is trying those same tactics against us to get us off the sidewalks in front of their convention.
And if MAFA 21 is for the betterment of black folks and opening people's eyes, and you want them to see what's going on, and they try to stop it, I don't get that. I'm
get
perplexed.
it if you understood that they're in bed with the eugenicists.
They're partisans.
Right.
And they're pushing the ideology that is against our community. And we need to recognize that. And I appreciate what Clenard is doing and Walter Hoy by going out and trying to give that information to them. I'm more inclined to want to expose that, to take a camera out and show the community exactly where the NAACP is. Mm-hmm. They're not for us. They're against us.
But they got a lot of good response. And we even had some response back here, people calling back saying, I heard about this, I saw this thing, you know, how can we get involved? But he had a lot of good response. And what's interesting here, what you see with the NAACP is that if you separate out the leadership of the NAACP and then the rank and file members of the NAACP, what you see is two completely different agendas.
Exactly. And it's the leadership that we're talking about that is that's in the bed with the progressive liberals in America and pushing that agenda
and
in
the
America
eugenics
today.
crowd.
Yeah, absolutely.
The pro-eugenics crowd.
Which is not unusual because, you know, W.E. Du Bois was a eugenicist.
Right. That's right.
In the civil rights movement, we had what was called the foot soldiers. And those were the people who literally were doing the real demonstrations, doing the sit down in the lunch counters, actually out there on the street. Those are the ones who had the dogs put on them, had the water spray. And they are very different from the people that are leaderships. But the sad part of it is there are people that are in leadership now who are living on the laurels of what happened back then.
Right.
You know, but these people today have jumped in bed with Jezebel so bad, it doesn't make any sense.
Well, we can't show a lot of it here, but the report that we talked about last month, we just sent to the printer yesterday. I'll let you guys look at a pre-production copy of it here. This thing is going to be big, and I think it's going to relight the fire under MAFA again.
It's going to cause a firestorm across the country. What you have done is documented empirically what we've already known, is that there has been a deliberate targeting of the black community and Hispanic community in America today by the eugenics movement and Planned Parenthood to control our population.
We've got the data now. There's no argument about it now.
It's irrefutable.
Right.
Irrefutable.
Anytime you got hardcore facts, they have a problem
They'll
on
come
their
up
hands
with a way
now.
to dispute it. That
They're
it's
not
a
going to be able to
myth or
dispute
something.
this one. This dispute what they were trying to say in the first place. Oh, it's really not that bad. Oh, no, we're not targeting. Oh, no. Well, deal with this one.
Yeah, right.
That's where our services are needed.
Just to make sure.
They'll make it sound pretty.
Just to make people understand, if you guys out there want a copy of this report, just call us on the number that's on the screen, and we'll send you a copy of it for free. It's at the printer right now. By the time you get this, we'll have them.
And it'll be online.
And we are going to put it online as well. But basically what we've done is we've taken every zip code in America in which there's a Planned Parenthood facility or an abortion clinic, independent abortion clinic, and we've analyzed that zip code's racial makeup, black and Hispanic, against the state's racial makeup. And the numbers are staggering, as y'all saw. I mean, you have...
It's breathtaking. And irrefutable means irrefutable.
Right.
They cannot spin this.
Right.
They can't spin it.
We've got them.
It's irrefutable.
We've got them dead to rights this time. The numbers, and we've got all these charts in here that show what the percentage of each one of these zip codes is of minority and black population, and show how out of sync it is with the whole state. Once you see this, you cannot argue that they're not targeting.
It authenticates our premise right from the beginning and affirms what we see with our eye. What's going on in this administration, in particular, when you have persons like John Holdren, who is the science czar, who wrote in 1977 Eco-Science, and in that book he advocated forced abortion, forced sterilization, and putting sterilant in your food in order to, and water, in order to control population. What is he doing in the Obama administration, along with Kassenstein and others who are population control? There is an effort to try to integrate into our culture that ideology.
Right, right. And it's well,
and we're affirming
underway.
it here
right.
with the statistic.
We're well underway of it. I mean, obviously, this makes the point.
It makes the point.
And you can see, too, how if you just watch these charts, all of a sudden, they're really going after the Hispanics. Historically, they've been going after the blacks, but now they're not backing off going after the blacks. They're just adding the Hispanics to the mix.
I know that you knew this information, but I want to know when you saw it, did it impact you further?
Oh, man, I was thinking that, if you ever seen a 1-2 punch, this is it. This is right to the solar plexus and across the chin. Pow, down they go. Down goes Frazier. Down goes Planned Parenthood. Down goes Planned Parenthood.
Well, anyway,
we hear it, but then when you see it like
when you
that,
actually
it was
see it,
something,
yeah.
It is absolutely authenticating.
Well, another thing is happening with one of our friends that's been pushing Alpha 21, Reverend Joseph Parker. We've had him on the show before. Really, really nice guy from Mississippi. And he's joining us today. Hello, Joseph.
Good morning. How are you all today?
Well, fine, sir. How are you doing?
Doing well.
Thank you for joining us. Now, let me see if I've got this right. You had a situation. You guys are proposing a personhood amendment in Mississippi.
Mm-hmm.
And you had some people show up there who were holding themselves out to be fellow Mississippians opposed to this thing, and that turned out not to be the case.
Well, yes. Basically, the Secretary of State has been holding somewhere around, I think, 8 to 10 hearings across the state for 3 specific initiatives that will be voted on this coming November, and one of them is the personhood amendment. Over 130,000 signatures were gathered to do that. And at the hearing, you have a 5-minute speaker for and a 5-minute speaker against. Well, the speaker for was a gentleman that I work with. His name is Brad Pruitt. He's the campaign manager for Yes on 26. He spoke for it. The person speaking against it indicated that he had roots in Mississippi. He said he was an evangelical Southern Baptist preacher, and he said he was very much against it. But shortly afterwards, one of the guys on our team Googled and found out that he's actually from Seattle, Washington, that he is, in fact, the chaplain for Planned Parenthood as well, and has worked for Planned Parenthood for some time as well. So he's not a Mississippian.
Well,
chaplain for Planned Parenthood. Something wrong with that whole statement.
We had a segment about this guy a year or two ago. Lachina is his name. About how he claimed to be such a good Southern Baptist, and his father was a Southern Baptist preacher. He's a Southern Baptist preacher, and now all of a sudden he's a pro-abort. He's also homosexual, but he's a pro-abort, and he's the chaplain for all the Planned Parenthoods in Washington State. But then he shows up down here in Mississippi, pretending to be from Mississippi and being a Southern Baptist. He's not a Southern Baptist preacher, but he claims that he is.
And this is why Scripture tells us to be vigilant, because Satan himself can transform himself into an angel of light. So what if his ministers do the same thing? Right. And this is exactly what this is. This guy's trying to transform himself into being like an angel of light. The Southern Baptists, pro-life and pro-choice, and the guy was just a bald-faced liar.
They're heretics. Yeah. Joseph, let me ask you, you were in this meeting, right?
Yes, I was.
I read some report about this that said there were audible gasps in the audience when your guys sitting there on their laptops figure out who this guy is and say, hey, no, that's not who he is. And that people were really angry there that were in the meeting that may or may not have been in favor of the personhood amendment either way.
Right. Well, I think a typical reaction is, like, often on both sides, people will tend to look a little differently to people that are not really from a location than those who are actually there. Well, of course, Brad Pruitt, he is an attorney who's on our side. He's from Mississippi, born and bred, and works in Mississippi. Again, the fact that Planned Parenthood would bring somebody from so far away to Mississippi it's tragic to think of that. But also the fact is we've been told that they're pouring $12 million into Mississippi to shut this amendment down, to stop it from being passed. So, we have a fight on our hands, but God's blessing, so we're making progress.
Now, Reverend Parker, let's put this in perspective. How many abortion clinics do they have in Mississippi?
There's only one left in Mississippi.
Jackson.
And they're going to put $12 million there to keep this one abortion clinic open, right?
Yeah, I think one of the big issues is just the fact that, of course, the personhood amendment failed twice in another state. They're working on it in Georgia, working on it in Alabama, and several states. But it looks like Mississippi will have the opportunity to be the first state to actually pass it come November. And, of course, it'll be pivotal to really every other state.
Absolutely.
So clearly it has them sweating.
Well, you know something that this told me, Reverend Parker,
What's that?
Is that when they had to import a guy from Seattle, Washington, it tells me they couldn't find anybody in Mississippi.
Right. And even the people otherwise that they've had at these hearings, and it appears now, of course, I can't document this, but it appears that there are definitely people traveling from a ways away to coming to the different hearings. They're having them in different geographic areas of the state. But another minister was brought from another state to speak at one of the hearings in southern Mississippi as well. And so they're importing people to come. And one of the gentlemen that spoke against it at this same hearing, he had a British accent.
But he was from Mississippi.
But he's from Mississippi.
He has to work on his southern accent a little bit.
Right.
So.
Well, maybe he was from southern England.
Maybe that's what it was.
Maybe that's what it was. Well, listen, Reverend Parker, I appreciate your calling this to my attention. You'd called me one day about this, and of course the national media and the local media here,
they missed it.
Somehow they missed this little charade that the pro-aborts tried to pull. But I appreciate you bringing it to our attention, and I'm sure we'll have you back soon.
Okay, please pray for us as we move towards passing this amendment.
And thank you.
That's the good work.
Absolutely, and thanks for the help you're giving us with MAFA 21 down there. This man has bought a lot of them. He's putting them out. He's putting them out at his expense. The guy is really on fire, and he's doing a good.
Yes,
They're continuing to make a lot of headway as well.
Well, thank you, and we'll be getting one of these new reports out to you too. You're going to be stunned at what you see.
All right, thanks so much.
Thank you, sir. Thanks for being with us.
Bye.
These guys are out there on the front lines, and
These guys, in Reverend Joseph Parker meeting, him and Walter Hoy has something in common. They have a very calm spirit.
Yep. Right.
Calm spirit, real.
But tenacious.
Yes. And committed.
Right.
And committed. Not only is he.
Don't let that demeanor fool you.
They'll get it done.
He and Walter. Walter Hoy, as we remember in California, told that judge, just put him in jail. Put me in jail forever. And they had that big fracas in the courtroom, and that other black guy stood up and said, "You put him in jail. There goes Martin Luther King. Now you're going to have to deal with Malcolm X." You remember that?
I was there.
Okay. Now you got to deal with Malcolm X. You put him in jail. But anyway, yeah, these guys are out there on the front lines, and you can't say enough about what they do. But little things like this happen all the time that we never hear about, and you don't have a Joseph Parker there who calls and says, "Hey, get this out to the pro-life community." But these kind of things go on a daily basis. Absolutely. Thanks. Now let's check in with Father Frank and Janet.
Well, thanks, Mark. Friends, we're going to talk today about something that Priests for Life has promoted from the very beginning, and that is the power of presence at the abortion centers. People of God being at the killing centers when the killing is taking place. And one of the most powerful manifestations of this throughout the world has been the helpers of God's precious infants. Janet, tell us more.
Well, Monsignor Riley, who's the founder of that program, was at our office recently, and Father, you had a chance to interview him. And I know many of our LifeTalk audience have not seen Monsignor in a while, and he's back in the saddle, he's back at work. Let's see what Monsignor had to say.
So, Monsignor, as you mentioned, this is Calvary today at these abortion mills where the children are being killed. Describe to us what happens in a vigil as the people of God then come to Calvary. What sort of structure does that vigil take?
Okay. We come, the large vigil we talk about, it starts with the Mass at a nearby church. And at the end of the Mass, we expose the Blessed Sacrament. And then the priest or the bishop are present. They go in, they change, and they come back out, and they start the rosary in front of the Blessed Sacrament. Everybody has a song sheet. There's 15 hymns on it, and they take a rosary. And the priest, the bishop, starts down the center aisle. Preceding him is two people carrying Our Lady Guadalupe, and then he goes and people behind him. And from the beginning of the vigil to the end, there's no talking. You see, our conversation with God and our Blessed Lady. So we go in song and prayer to the site. We do usually the joyful mysteries on the way, and we do the sorrowful and glorious at the site. When we finish the glorious mysteries, we have 1 minute of silence. All over the world this is done, okay? We have 1 minute of silence where you're just asking for God for mercy, mercy, mercy. And we ask the people, if possible, to either genuflect or to stand or to kneel. Most people end up kneeling, and it's a powerful, powerful witness. While we are doing the prayer vigil, there are people always offering material and help to the women coming, you see. And then when we finish that, we have our final hymns and prayers at the site, and we go back saying to the church, doing the luminous mysteries, and then we have closing benediction. God loves the woman. Many times in our society, they're so convinced that it's going to bring back yesterday. I get out my life again if I have an abortion. They believe it. And it's not until they do it that they realize I was taken. If you turn the heart of a mother after the abortion, 100% of the time that's pleasing to God because he loves her, okay? But 50% of the time, as you know, Father, there's a 50% repeat rate. And so 50% of the time, if you touch the heart of the mother, you're saving the next child, okay? So this particular method now has been used across the country. We have more than 100 bishops doing it. We have 7 cardinals in the United States alone have led the Helpers Prayer Vigils. And then it went to Europe, okay? Dietmar Fischer was the first one in Vienna. He asked me to come. But we have the helpers through all of England, in Ireland, in Spain, in France, in Germany. We have 26 cities in Germany. It's through Switzerland. It's gone into the whole of the Eastern Bloc countries. I've been to Riga, Latvia, did a prayer vigils. Kiev, Ukraine. You see, it's in Belarus. It's in Hungary. It's Romania, Moldova, all these places. And of course, it's gone to Africa. You see, and we tried to get in Africa. The first prayer vigil I did in Africa was in Cape Town, South Africa. See? And you can find that on the helperslibrary.info, all these vigils and so forth. Very powerful tape, by the way, of the vigil. That's where it started. I went there because they had legalized abortion in South Africa. But the helpers are on the 5 continents of the world right now. And everybody, I tell people, I come not to give a talk, I come to teach you how to fish.
The importance, obviously, built into the helpers model is the presence of the priest and, as often as possible, the bishop. Tell us about why that's so important for the clergy, particularly, to be there at the killings.
John Paul II, in an encyclical Evangelium Vitae, in section 25, he said, I tell you the secret of success for the whole pro-life movement. He said, it's the blood of Christ. And if you read section 25, the blood of Christ is the answer. So we always offer the blood of Christ at the beginning of the vigil, the Mass. Mm-hmm. And then we receive Christ, body and blood. You see, we receive him. And then we go and we bring Christ, you see, to Golgotha again. We can't do that without the priest. We can't do that. And if the priest and bishop leads us, it's so much even more powerful. But when the priest sees his role as priest in the Right to Life movement, you see, he immediately makes sense to him. Whereas we ask him to come as a man of prayer, a man of sacrifice, to lead us to Golgotha. And when it's finished, he goes home. Everything's set for him. He doesn't have to organize it. He doesn't have to plan. He just has to, when a bishop comes, he just has to come that day, offer the Mass, give some words of wisdom to us and consolation. Then he goes, he says the rosary with us, prays, come back and do benediction, and then he goes back to his thing. And it's over in no time because it's like 7:30 to 10:30 on a Saturday morning. You see? Right. It's only 3 hours. Right. So that many lay organizations, many pro-life groups have disconnected themselves from the official church almost. You see, well, the official church does it. It's the real organization that has united lay people and priests and bishops together, and together we can do this because we cannot do it apart. We cannot do it separately, and you need Christ and the sacrifice of Mass because this is demonic. You need the spiritual dimension here. You see, and in order for you to you need the Eucharist. If you're going to live out the Mass and do what Christ did, you can't do that. It's not a matter of, say, an intellectual thing and so forth. When you go out there and you're cursed and you are rejected, you know, to respond as Jesus did on the cross, Father, forgive them, they don't know what they're doing, with love, that's not human, that's divine, you see?
Yes.
But that's what changes everything.
Monsignor, just from a personal angle, tell us how much time of your average month over all these years that you've been doing this are you personally out in front of these clinics?
Well, I spend about 4 to 5 hours every day over the last 22 years. See? So that I do sidewalk counseling. I pray 5 days a week, almost 5 hours a day.
Of course, you're in a great position to give advice on this, that when you're there and you see this woman coming, making her way into that abortion mill, many people ask, well, what do I say to them if I have only a few seconds? What do you recommend?
Well, we started the Feast of Our Lady of the Rosary, you know, and we have people making rosaries for us all across the country, and we ask them to pray for the people to whom the rosaries will be given. We offer people rosaries. All faith, no faith, and how to say the rosary. And I usually will say to them, Mom, would you take a pair of rosaries, and would you pray for the mothers who have come here, because they come here because they have real problems, or they wouldn't be coming here. See? So it's right away you're not condemning them. You see, you're saying what you know. That the worst thing to say is don't kill your baby. That's crazy. No mother's coming to want to kill a baby. You see, she's desperate. She doesn't know what to do, and the world is telling her this is the answer. So when they come, you say to them, Mother, the person comes, I say, would you take a rosary, and I give this how to say the rosary. Would you pray for the women who come here, who have come here, because they need help. And I have a 10-week-old fetal model in my hand under my thumb here, and I open it and say, most of them are 10 weeks, you see, and they look at it. It's very important that they see it. And then you say, we try to tell them they're not alone, and then we pull out the material and we show all the places where they can get help. See? And I said, but Mom, if they don't take that help, you know, it's very important. On the bottom I have the did you know, you see, which has the result of a suction abortion. I said, this is what will happen to the child in 4 minutes if she doesn't take the help. See? And I said, it's very important that she knows that. But if she does the abortion anyway, I said, we will be here to speak to her after it. You see? Because God's mercy.
It seems that as you talk to them, then you're using a progressive model, if I'm understanding.
Yes, because eventually you're asking her, maybe you need help.
Yeah.
You see? And the fact is this, that if a woman had an abortion before, you have a 70% chance of failure if you don't deal with it.
Right.
And I get about 3 minutes to deal with it.
Right.
Okay? But when I say to them, look, I'm talking about the woman inside. I'm talking about even if she had the abortion, I'm still going to be there.
Yeah.
See? And I'm going to tell her about God's mercy and God's love. Then I can say to her, look, maybe you need help. Maybe you've had an abortion yourself, but God never stopped loving you. If you had an abortion, once you know the truth, God wants you to change. You see, you got to begin again. You see, there's light at the end of the tunnel.
Because some people ask me this question about the impact when, like you say, that final step where if they don't take the help, you actually show them the picture of an abortion. Well, tell us of the importance of, at that stage in the counseling, the importance of actually seeing that imagery.
Oh, it's absolutely important because, you see, inside they receive nothing. They're told nothing. And there is no counseling inside. They don't tell them the development of the child. They don't. See, the mother says, I don't want the child. They don't want to think of what does the child look like? How are they going to get the child out? What are they going to do with the child when it's out? You see? I mean, all these things, they want to know. But they must know because it's going to hit them like a ton of bricks after it. And what you're doing is, you're letting them know everything they're not telling inside. In other words, what you're saying to them is, look, I recognize you have problems, you wouldn't be coming here. You see? But I'm saying that about the people inside. It's only secondarily to come back to the woman. Right? And I'm saying, I know that the problems are because this is what, now suddenly they see the child. Okay, they won't show the sonogram inside. They keep it away from the mother, but they already have seen the 10-week-old child like this. And then you say, there's help. They don't want to know there's help. I also give them the rosary. See, I tell them, look, if you pray, God will help you. It's very, very important, see? So they don't want to know that either. And the God knows they don't want to know what will happen to the child, okay? And what are they going to do with that child. See, they do have like called a medical waste garbage truck. It comes usually on Fridays, and it goes from clinic to clinic. So like a big warehouse truck. By the end of the day, it's filled with dead babies.
Well, we want to thank Monsignor Philip Riley and all the helpers of God's precious infants, and we want you, brothers and sisters, to be involved.
Well, and also, Father, I let our LifeTalk audience to know we have a special resource available this month. It's the St. Gerard Magella Prayer Card, Novena Card, which is available absolutely free at Priest for Life. And he's the patron saint of expectant mothers and women wanting to conceive a child. Contact our Priest for Life office to get your St. Gerard Magella Prayer Card.
Yes, and prayercampaign.org, it supplies you with pro-life prayers throughout the year. Let's raise a gigantic prayer on behalf of life. Well, that's all for our Gospel of Life segment for this month. Now, Mark, back to you.
Thank you, Father Frank. All right. I got a really nice note here. They went to a lot of trouble with this, put a little bear with a little ribbon on it and everything. Really nice for me. It was from my sisters in Jesus Christ, Sharon Fulalove and Teresa Villegas. I wish they had names like Smith and Jones. I know how to pronounce those a little better. But anyway, they're with the St. Vincent Ferrer Pro-Life Ministry in Menifee, California, because they had taken advantage of our offer for free cases of Lyme 5s, and they've got an event coming up. And she just wrote me this real nice thank you note for them. And it reminded me to remind everybody again about the Lyme 5 offer, and that we are making these available to any pro-life group out there, any pro-life individual. You've got some kind of function coming up. You've got a banquet. You're going to be at a state fair or something. Lyme 5 is something that needs to get in the hands, especially all these young pro-lifers that are coming into the movement right now. Need to get these things out there, and we'll make them available. All you pay is the shipping. You can order them by the case.
Just don't read it before you go to sleep.
Yeah, right. You've already warned us about that. But it's not light reading. But if you want to know what goes on inside the abortion industry, you don't know unless you read this. We did a lot of research on this.
You may think you know.
Yeah, you may think you know, but you don't until you read this. But anyway, we will give them to you. We'll donate them to your event. If you have something coming up, give us a call. We'll send you these by the case. There's 32 in a case, and I think we're averaging shipping on them about $15. All you pay is the shipping, and we'll donate the books to you. So if you've got some event coming up, be sure and call and order your copy of Lyme 5. Now, we've got an old friend on the program today that's been with us today, Brian Brown. And let me just recap everybody so you remember what happened to this man. He is being denied the ability to practice law in Indiana. They're not granting him a license because he's a Christian and because he's pro-life. And to the point that the state bar required him to appear for psychiatric evaluation because of his religious beliefs.
In Indiana.
In Indiana, United States of America. This sounds like the Soviet Union, the old re-education camps, right? Mm-hmm. Where you go to get straightened out. Brian, thank you for joining us, sir.
It's great to be on, Mark.
Is what I said the basic truth of what went on?
It really is. They targeted me because of my pro-life past and activism in the past. I'd been involved in Operation Rescue, and since that time I'd gone to law school, been accepted at the Kansas bar, been approved for good moral and character fitness by Montana, by Missouri, by the National Board of Law Examiners, fellow of the United States Supreme Court, admitted and argued before half the federal appellate courts in the country, but it's hard to come home. And a lot of my pro-life activism from the 1979 when I attended Francis Schaeffer's and Sievert's Coops, whatever happened to the human race, took place in Indianapolis, and most of my pro-life activism until 1991 took place in Fort Wayne, Indiana. And we actually were involved in 3 rescues at the abortion clinic here in Fort Wayne, from which I'm calling you this morning, actually, from the same abortion clinic, the same building. It's not an abortion clinic anymore. It is now the Archangel Institute. But we led rescues against this building, and we caused we made a lot of enemies.
Well, my understanding is you even helped bail Johnny Hunter here out of a jam a couple of times.
I did. After I became an attorney, I'm not sure if I'd met Johnny before becoming an attorney. I was active in the movement before becoming an attorney, and as an attorney, I ended up representing a lot of people that I used to risk arrest with, and then I got to the point where I merely risked sanctions and civil contempt of court for.
Yeah.
I'm glad to say Johnny never got me thrown in jail as an attorney.
Oh, that's beautiful. Well, I tell you, you did a wonderful job for us in Georgia because they weren't going to allow blacks to march, do a pro-life march, without charging us a big, huge thing. And he had them in court the next day.
Good.
And I got a phone call from the mayor and the city attorney saying, Reverend Hunter, you can march, no charge, no nothing.
Right. I'm really curious about this. What are the constitutional ramifications of your case?
Well, the constitutional ramifications are, number one, I went up to the Supreme Court on petition for cert that had all sorts of constitutional ramifications, and as you all, I'm sure, know, the Supreme Court chooses its own docket, and if you go up on a petition for certiorari, you got about a 4% chance of getting it, and I did not. So my case ended with the Indiana Supreme Court saying, no, we don't want you, and we don't want you because you have come right out and told us that your allegiance is to a power higher than the state. And you can go to my website, www.archangelinstitute.org or .com, either one, if you want to see all this in writing. I mean, some people are going, the guy's got to be making some of this up. I'm not. It's there, affidavit format. They would pull my Kansas law license if I'm lying about this. So it's there.
But doesn't the Constitution of Indiana, the Constitution of the state of Indiana, appeal to God?
Oh, you're very right, sir. Hey, you're a pastor that knows his constitutions. I've got it right here in front of me. It's part of my federal case now, legal claim number 21. The Indiana Constitution, Section 2, all people shall be secure in the natural right to worship Almighty God according to the dictates of their own consciences. And I allege that these mental health officials got together and tagged me and targeted me because of my conscience telling me how to worship Almighty God and made it so I could not get my law license by their conspiring work against me. I also, Pastor, gave them Indiana Constitution Section 4. No preference shall be given by law to any creed, religious society, or mode of worship. And no person shall be compelled to attend, erect, or support any place of worship or to maintain any ministry against his consent. And I say that defendants, Dr. Bowman, Dr. Ross, social worker
The Supreme Court is in violation of your state constitution.
Pardon?
The state Supreme Court is in violation of your state constitution.
Well, that's how I read it, but of course the only place I can make that argument is to the state Supreme Court, and they said, no, we don't see it that way. So now I'm in federal court saying these state operatives are in violation of the federal Constitution. They're in violation of the state Constitution, and they also committed tortious acts against me in violation of state law. So I've now taken the psychologist that this government sent me to, the psychiatrist the government sent me to, who, by the way, has been active in pro-abortion circles since 1973, probably before that. I've documented since 73 by our own admission, and has been actively working against the Catholic Church and against anyone, Catholic or Protestant, involved in rites of exorcism for a long time. That's who they sent me to as a psychiatrist. If Troy was here, he would say, you mean a screaming pro-abort? And I would say, well, Troy, we don't want to say that. But that's what Troy would say.
That's what I would say.
Okay, that's what Johnny would say.
So
and,
let me make sure I got this right. In order to get a law license in Indiana, you have to be evaluated by a psychiatrist and then a psychologist, and one of them has been a long-time abortion rights activist for 40 years, it sounds like, a 40-year-long abortion rights activist. You got to go to them so they can put their imprimatur on and say you're not crazy as a drugstore rat, so that you can practice law. Is that what I'm hearing?
That is what you're hearing, sir. That is correct. And
what was the vote on the Supreme Court?
Pardon?
What was the vote on the Supreme Court?
I don't know. There had to be 4 of them vote to take the case to put it on their docket, the United States Supreme Court, and I did not get 4 to say docketed. So I was a petition denied, like 96% of all who go up and ask the Supreme Court of the United States.
I wasn't talking about the federal Supreme Court. I'm talking about the state Supreme Court.
state Supreme Court, I don't know. It was signed. It
wasn't a unanimous decision, was it?
Well, it was a minute order, sir, and so it was actually signed by the Chief Judge, Randall Shepard, of the Indiana Supreme Court. In subsequent rulings, he would usually put that this was an anonymous ruling of the court. In my case, I don't believe it said that in the initial instance.
And is all of this still going on? Are you still trying to fight it and get your license there?
If you go to my website, archangelinstitute.org, you can see I've got right now my final brief to the Indiana Supreme Court. I pointed out to the Indiana Supreme Court just how unjust this had been and how a court that celebrates the great feminists of the past, even dressing up in 1871 regalia to celebrate their civil disobedience, should not be holding my civil disobedience against me and trying to get into the bar. And some other things that I found that really are very interesting, and people are thinking, I don't want to read his brief, it sounds boring. No, believe me, it's probably more sociology than law. You'll find it exciting if you're a pro-lifer or a pro-family activist. But I'm basically done with the Indiana Supreme Court right now. I've now taken the agency that they remanded me to for this mental health workup, I've taken them into federal court, and I'm suing them in federal court for a violation of my constitutional and civil rights.
And Susan B. Anthony was big pro-lifer. Did they forget about that, or just they overlook that?
Well, no, they overlooked that, just like they also published a book on Nuremberg that never talks about the fact that the Nuremberg tribunal based their ruling upon natural law and the assumption that there's a universal lawgiver.
Yep.
So they're very good, as leftists always are, at cutting out the part of history that matters and just focusing on the peripheries that matter to them.
Well, I wanted you to come back on to update people and tell them, what the latest thing is, because this sounds so almost unbelievable.
It is breathtaking.
That it could actually be going on. I mean, it's...
And that they're getting away with it.
And they're getting away with it.
I think it's kind of like the big lie, Hitler and Goebbels and all said that if you said something, a lie big enough, often enough people would believe it. I think that taking me on after having been a 10-year attorney in Kansas, after having been a fellow of the United States Supreme Court, and taking me down, I think that it was a pretty bold move on their part, but I think a lot of pro-lifers, pro-family, Christians that hear it go, well, it can't really be. There must be something else wrong. This guy must not be shooting us straight.
Right.
And that's why I went ahead and I put it all on the website. I didn't file anything under seal. It's all in the federal court. You can go read the psych reports on me. You can read the psychiatrist reports, the psychologist reports. There's numerous ones. You can read the one from my psychiatrist that says there's nothing wrong with this guy. Why aren't you putting him in the bar? And they have blatantly. I mean, I'm John F. Kennedy in Dallas, and they shot me in the head, and everybody's going, well, those things happen. It couldn't have been a conspiracy.
It's unbelievable. Well, Brian, listen, I want you to make sure that you keep us apprised of what's going on, because I want to bring you back on from time to time and just tell us where this thing is, because, again, you don't even know what to say. It seems so outlandish.
Are you the only lawyer in the state of Indiana that has to go through this kind of process in order to get a license?
I'm not sure, because what they generally do is that they put you through this process, and then they basically let you know there's hope at the end of this, and they told me in 5 years I could reapply. Now, they're supposed to only block you for 2 years, but they gave me 5. If I was a child molester, there's child molesters, I lay out in my Supreme Court briefing, there's child molesters who only got 2 years out on the penalty box. I'm in the penalty box for 5. And a lot of people who have been run through something similar to this have usually been run through it because they were a child molester, a serial drunk driver, because they're a kleptomaniac, and they don't want to get out and talk about it. Hey, I've been arrested 12 times. It was all in defense of life, and it was all before I went to law school. And you know what? I'm not ashamed of it. It wasn't the wrong thing to do.
Right. It was the right thing to do. Well, sometimes...
And so I'll get out and talk about something that a lot of people wouldn't talk about. I think I may be the first Christian activist to be run through this gauntlet, but if they get away with what they're done to me, I don't think I'll be the last. I think it'll be some Baptist attorney that writes a letter to the editor and complains about homosexual marriage, and then, boom, he'll be before the disciplinary council and sent to the same system I was sent in. It'll be some Catholic attorney who says there shouldn't be contraceptive mandates in the federal programs. Boom, he's going to be turned in for disciplinary complaint, and they're going to tell him you got to go through JLAP to get out of this, and he's going to be sent to the same people I was.
Yep. Well, keep us apprised of what's going on, Brian.
Well, I'm writing my reply brief right now. I expect a ruling between Thanksgiving and Christmas at the earliest.
Well, let us know how it goes.
God bless y'all.
Thank you.
Good to be on. Yep.
Thank you.
Thank you for joining us, sir.
Now, see, that psychiatrists and psychologists, they both need to be kicked off of that system altogether.
Why? You know, he's the thing that's amazing. He says you can go on there and read what the psychiatrist and the psychologist said about me. Why should that even be on? Why should that even be an issue? This is the Soviet Union. Mm-hmm. Yeah. This is what went on in the Soviet Union.
The Soviet Union's protecting women from abortion.
That's now. I'm talking about a long time ago. The way they got rid of people they didn't like was to declare them mentally unstable and lock them away somewhere, and that's the last you ever heard of them. That's what this is about. Mm-hmm. It's
scary. How to drag a person's name through the mud.
It's mind-boggling when you think about it.
Citizens of the state of Indiana need to be out in the streets on this one.
Yeah.
But I'm telling you what, Stephan, the left in every other state is watching that. And like he said, if they get away with it there, then what about all these, for example, these Catholic attorneys now are filing these briefs over the Obamacare saying that you must include contraception and morning after pills and all that abortion deficient drugs. Those guys are going to be just like he said. They're going to be dragged before the disciplinary board of the state bar and ran through some sort of psychological evaluation, and they're going to be determined to be nuts, and that's going to be the last you hear of them.
I guess that's why I asked what was the vote on the state Supreme Court. Were they divided on the issue?
Apparently, he said they didn't have to say. It was an anonymous vote.
It was anonymous. Okay.
Which is even scarier. This is a star chamber type of situation, you know, where you go in a tribunal of people, you know, that nobody knows who they are, and they're not accountable to anybody, like a Supreme Court justice goes in and makes a decision like this to destroy somebody's life, and nobody knows who they are, what to do about it, or anything. Like I said, it's a very star chamber-like environment. Astonishing. Well, thanks. And listen, thanks for filling in. You did a great job.
Oh, good information. Love being here.
Troy may not get it. Johnny did, but we felt sorry. We felt sorry for Johnny, so we let him stay. But anyway, thank you again for being with us. Appreciate it. Well, that's all the time we have for now. Until next time, remember, Life Dynamics is not here to put up a good fight. We're here to win, because winning is how the killing stops. We'll see you in October.